China is suffering Olympic madness. India sells a missile defense system to the Philippines. And a new contender challenges China. That and more on this week's China News Headlines. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics are almost here. The Chinese Communist Party really wants it to go smoothly. But for some reason, people keep talking about all the genocide the Chinese regime is committing. The Chinese regime hates this. And that's why we're celebrating the 2022 Olympics by offering this lovely new t-shirt in our merchandise store. Beijing 2022. Fake snow, real genocide. The link is below. Now you might be wondering why we don't have the Olympic rings on the t-shirt, or even the word Olympics. Well, it turns out the International Olympic Committee is very litigious and considers their Olympic trademarks sacred. Too bad the IOC doesn't feel the same way about human rights. But when you wear this t-shirt, you'll be helping spread the word about not just the fake snow China is using, but also the very real genocide. And the best part is, these shirts aren't made in China. So visit chinauncensored.tv/merchandise by clicking the link below. But speaking of ignoring genocide, Chamath Palihapitiya. He owns a stake in the NBA team, the Golden State Warriors. And here are his thoughts on the Uyghur genocide.
Nobody cares about what's happening to the Uyghurs, okay? You bring it up because you really care, and I think that's nice that you care. The rest of us don't care. I'm just telling you a very hard...
Wait, you're saying you personally don't care?
I'm telling you a very hard, ugly truth, okay? Of all the things that I care about, yes, it is below my line. Okay? Of all the things that I care about, it is below my line.
That obviously caused a huge backlash. Because, guess what, you jerk? A lot of people do care about the Uyghurs. The Warriors were quick to throw him under the bus, tweeting, "As a limited investor who has no day-to-day operating functions with the Warriors, Mr. Palihapitiya does not speak on behalf of our franchise, and his views certainly don't reflect those of our organization." Notice how they don't say which of his views, or mention the Uyghurs, China, or genocide. Because the sad truth is, in a way, Palihapitiya is right. The NBA's silence on China proves it's less interested in human rights than the bottom line. And it's not just the NBA. Why do we do any business with a country committing genocide? Because at the end of the day, a lot of people really do care more about their own bottom line than some faraway ethnic group's basic human rights. Not me, though. That's why I made the very unprofitable decision to call attention to China's human rights atrocities. What I'm trying to say is, please buy my t-shirt. But the Olympics look like they're heading for trouble. Omicron is raging throughout China, and people aren't even buying China's claims that the Omicron outbreak in Beijing came from Canadian mail. Look, I like blaming things on Canada as much as the next guy, but that's too far even for me. China has now canceled Olympic ticket sales now that cases have been found in Beijing, which is actually perfect because now tickets will only be distributed to a selected group of spectators. So no pesky troublemakers can get in, especially not all those prominent activists who are being rounded up and detained ahead of the games. The International Olympic Committee responded to those abuses by saying, but there's still the problem of those foreign athletes who apparently have to come compete in the Olympics. Look, I've been saying from the start that the Chinese Communist Party should encourage Olympic boycotts. Because if Chinese athletes are the only ones competing, then China would win all the gold medals. But for some reason, the Communist Party never listens to me. So they still have to deal with foreign athletes, which is why they're warning foreign Olympic athletes against speaking out while in China. A Chinese official said, "Any expression that is in line with the Olympic spirit, I'm sure, will be protected. Any behavior or speech that is against the Olympic spirit, especially against the Chinese laws and regulations, are also subject to certain punishment." And that mandatory Olympic app China is forcing athletes to download? Yeah, it's riddled with security flaws. That's why Team USA is being told to bring a burner phone. It's insane that our solution to dealing with a hostile, authoritarian communist regime that's committing genocide is to tell people, I don't know, use a burner phone? And coming up after the break, China's not going to like it, but India is selling weapons to the Philippines. Welcome back. The Philippines will be the first country to buy a shore-based anti-ship missile system from India. The cost is nearly $375 million. The missile system was jointly developed by India and Russia. What's not to like? The Philippines is in desperate need of a military overhaul. They're still using warships from World War II. And that's a problem because China is rapidly militarizing the South China Sea. It claims the entire South China Sea, challenging neighboring countries like the Philippines for territory. The new anti-ship system aims to deter foreign vessels from encroaching on the country's 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone. Recently, the Philippines had to tell China to back off from encroaching on its EEZ. Maybe with a little more firepower behind it, the Chinese regime will get the message. The new missile system will top off the Philippines' Israeli-made Spike-ER missiles, its first ever ship-borne missile systems for maritime deterrence. And coming up after the break, I'm loving these Eastern European countries. Welcome back. If you've been watching, you know I'm a big fan of Lithuania. That's because it's been standing up to the Chinese Communist Party and supporting Taiwan. Lithuania's foreign minister said the whole EU needs to stand up to China. Needless to say, Lithuania is driving the Chinese Communist Party nuts. It's doing everything it can to bully Lithuania into submission by withdrawing officials and by essentially launching a trade war on the country. But according to Carnegie Europe, China's bullying of Lithuania is spurring European unity. And now, Slovenia is also standing up to the Chinese regime. China was shocked by Slovenia's plans to allow Taiwan to open a de facto embassy, and has condemned it. This is basically how the whole fight with Lithuania got started. And considering how we started the show, I'm glad to be talking about a country not selling out to China. Speaking of not selling out, Conflict of Nations World War III. Now, I have not played it myself, but I noticed this ad for the game floating around on Facebook. Notice anything? How about the fact that Taiwan has clearly invaded China, seized most of it, and is now calling it West Taiwan? They say life imitates art. I sure hope it does. It's the rise of the machines! Seriously, a Chinese property giant said its employee of the year was not a human, but an AI program. It's an AI-powered debt collector named Sui Xiaopan. At first glance, Sui is depicted as a beautiful young professional in her 20s. Why do I get the feeling we're not yet at the end goal for this technology? The Chinese Communist Party is all about replacing its mindless communist drones with actual mindless AI drones. Like the time China used an AI news anchor that was almost indistinguishable from a real human. If the news is fake, why not the anchor? Especially because China may soon be running out of people. China's birth rate fell to a record low last year, like the lowest in decades. The figure marks the lowest since 1960, when the Great Famine, caused by the CCP's Great Leap Forward campaign, killed an estimated tens of millions. So literally the only time the birth rate was lower is when everyone was starving to death because of botched communist policies. But at least China is mining a record amount of coal. Yep, Good thing China's working so hard to fight climate change. And in a reminder that China is a totalitarian regime like something out of a sci-fi dystopia, the Chinese Communist Party is running a program called Operation Skynet. Yes, Skynet, like in Terminator. This is not the first thing they've called Skynet. Apparently they really like the name for some reason. But the party used this different Operation Skynet to hunt down people who have fled China. And apparently it's been very successful. According to the NGO Safeguard Defenders, since its launch in 2014 as part of Xi Jinping's anti-corruption campaign, 10,000 are claimed to have been successfully returned from over 120 countries. China uses no legal means for this. They literally kidnap people from other countries, or they threaten their families in China if they don't return on their own. Swell guys, aren't they? And on a lighter note, a Chinese woman stuck in a 14-day quarantine center watched helplessly as her home surveillance cameras caught her dog tearing up her home. I'm glad we could end on a fun note instead of something like a woman watching helplessly as her home surveillance cameras caught healthcare workers killing her dog. Speaking of killing small animals, Hong Kong is killing 2,000 hamsters and other small animals because there was a Delta outbreak at a pet shop. Authorities saw two possible sources for these infections: that the virus had spread from the pet shop employee to the customer, the most common method of COVID-19 transmission, or that the humans might have been infected by animals. So, just in case COVID came from hamsters and not other people like it normally does, Hong Kong authorities will be killing all the hamsters in pet shops. Hong Kong authorities are also encouraging people to give up their own pet hamsters for humane disposal. Now, hamsters are being abandoned in the streets of Hong Kong. This is how the road into dystopia begins, isn't it? Hong Kong 2047. Feral hamsters roam the streets of the abandoned city. But some residents are resisting the Hong Kong hamster massacre. Maybe Hong Kongers feel some empathy for small, helpless creatures caged and forced to run on endless wheels? In any case, an underground operation is emerging to save abandoned hamsters, with foster cares taking them in and concealing them. One of the reporters for this article said they granted anonymity to hamster owners who were afraid their pets would be traced and taken away by authorities. Hong Kong was once the freest part of China, the only part with some semblance of free speech and democracy. And now, after the Communist Party's crackdown, people are afraid the authorities are coming for their hamsters. Yeah, I'm glad we're ending on a light note. And now it's time when I answer questions from you, my loyal 50-cent army. Fans of the show who support what we do through the crowdfunding website Patreon or the exclusive social media platform Locals. John Shareshna asks on Patreon, the whole world is going insane. My question is, who will collapse first? The US and the West, or Xi and China? Ah, I see we're sticking with ending on a light note. Well, John, don't be so pessimistic. Why not both? But in all seriousness, the West and China are both facing unprecedented challenges. And at the end of the day, it all seems to be tied to whether you're following the tried and true traditional ways of living humankind has always thrived on, like having the freedom to live their own lives, or whether you throw that all out and try to force some variation of Marxism and communism. There are good people in all societies, even in China today. So as long as the good people don't stay silent, I think neither the West or China will collapse. I say China, not the Chinese Communist Party, because the party is definitely going to collapse. But China was around long before the Communist Party and will be around long after it's gone. Thanks for your question, John, and thank you for your support. YouTube is going nuts on us. So the only way we can keep affording to make this show is with your support. If you can, be like John and contribute to China Uncensored on patreon.com/China Uncensored. All it takes is $1. And You can also support us by purchasing this wonderful new Beijing 2022 t-shirt, or any of our other t-shirts and mugs at chinauncensored.tv/merchandise. Links to both are below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.